Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. Excited for another interview today. We have Mathew Kerbis on the show. Mathew, how are you this morning?
I'm doing great. When you have a 2-year-old, you get up nice and early, and so this recording time is 9 a.m. I've been up for hours.
Yeah, you're on your second day, starting at 9 a.m. Yeah, 2 years old. Is it your first?
Yeah, she's our first and only so far.
Congratulations. That's awesome. I'm sure you're not sleeping, but that's very exciting.
Yes, and while we loved living in Chicago for 10 years, we were in Streeterville. There's nothing like working at home in a 1-bed condo where you all of a sudden pregnant and have a baby. So you want to go find a bigger space when that situation presents itself.
Derek, I would say that was like 90% of my clients last year. It was something related to physical space and not having enough of it, whether it was baby or somebody moved in or somebody got old. It didn't matter, but it was all about like, I ran out of space.
I think a lot of it was people were just sick of one another at a certain point.
Yeah.
They were just they were looking at each other all day like, listen, I need to get out. I need more space, right? So I think that was probably a product of that as well, too.
So, Maddie, we're excited to have you on the show because really we learn a lot about every professional that we get the opportunity to interview. But I am super interested in the services you offer and really maybe even more so the journey that took you to where you got today. Because I was doing a little bit of like LinkedIn sleuthing, if you will. It sounds like, you went to IU, correct? And then you went to law school here in Chicago. Was that the first time that you came to Chicago, fell in love with Chicago? Are you from here? How did you end up here?
Yeah, no, especially in light of like the context of this show. Yeah, I've roots in Chicago that go back decades and decades. So, my grandparents, my dad's parents, the Kerbis grandparents, they moved to the John Hancock building. I guess we should say what was formerly known as the John Hancock building now.
I know. Forever, though.
I know. And, officially, since I am an attorney, I know they pulled their licensing rights to that name because they didn't want to be associated with it anymore, the John Hancock Company. So,
what a small pool of people that have lived in the Hancock building. That's a pretty cool thing.
Yeah. So they humble roots. Like my grandfather was a truck driver before becoming a Chicago police officer and then becoming a detective. And so, and he did that for 30-something years, and he was on the force for like 35 years and so humble roots, but was able to retire with an okay pension, and they were able to afford a 1-bedroom in the John Hancock, way up there, looking back towards the state, not the lake, not a Lakeview. You can't afford on a detective pension. You can't afford Lakeview in the Hancock.
That view gets up there.
We have to draw the line somewhere.
Right. And so. And, kudos to them, living in that place for like decades, just 2 people in like a small 1-bedroom, right? And so my whole life, I grew up in the suburbs. I lived in Indiana for 6 years, but that was when I was like a very little kid. My dad followed a good job out there. But then we came back but my whole life I've been going to downtown Chicago, Streeterville, because my grandparents live in the Hancock building and like getting to go like swimming on the pool on the 44th floor and like work out in the gym. And like over the years they've updated it. They have a grocery store there. Like for my soon to be 90-year-old Bubby. My grandfather's no longer with us, but like for her, like she's 90 years old. There's a bunch of other like elderly people there that she plays mahjong with, and she's got a grocery store in there. She never needs to leave. So it's a great place to retire.
Life is good.
Yeah. So I've been going downtown forever, and my whole life, and that area has meant a lot to me. So when I went to law school at DePaul, which is in the Loop, I decided I wanted to find a place to be near her. And at the time, my grandfather was alive still, and so I was at 900 Lakeshore Drive, which is the Mies van der Rohe true curtain wall building, and that was right down the street from the Hancock, so I got to see them a lot. And then that's where my now wife moved in with me in a little studio after a year of dating. And then we continued to live in a lot of different places in a lot of different units in Streeterville. So I could talk Chicago real estate all day.
That's awesome. It's hard to replace the experience of living in downtown Chicago and Streeterville. You're in the action. You've seen a ton of development through the times. You've seen in the neighborhood, really, Streeterville at one point was like, hey, there's nothing here. It's a drive-through territory. And then all of a sudden, we had grocery stores and bars and restaurants, and everybody's trying to get into Streeterville, and there's new luxury apartments. And so it's been a fascinating really the last 10, 15 years in street review, but even the last 5 have been really fun to watch.
Whole Foods came to town too, and that was nice.
Whole Foods changes every neighborhood. Once you get a Whole Foods, everything is different. Yeah.
I just remember the construction of that Whole Foods. It just shut down like blocks and blocks and blocks. It was so much traffic too.
Yeah, and because they were also building like a couple of high rises around the same time too.
Correct.
So like it was like all this.
It was the Whole Foods. It was like One Chicago was going in over there. There was like all a bunch of stuff going in. Yeah. So for you, you graduate. You knew you wanted to come back downtown. You love Chicago. What did you do first after law school? What was your first foray into the professional world?
Yeah. I ended up doing foreclosure defense work, and I don't think anyone goes to law school and says, "I want to do foreclosure defense work" when they go out.
It's a very specific niche.
They certainly don't say, "I want to go into foreclosure prosecution where I'm kicking people out of their house," right? Because like I was keeping a roof over people's heads.
Yeah.
So I got to do that, and I got to learn a lot about real estate. I haven't told this story in a while, actually, but like real estate was like, I was okay, like in law school, like in like the real estate classes, and I didn't know like that's what I would be practicing in when I like got out. And like, so civil procedure and real estate, I did okay. I think I got like B minuses in law school. I did better in antitrust. So anyway, like I'm out practicing, I'm doing real estate law and civil litigation. So like civil procedure and real estate, like these classes that I kind of enjoyed, but like I didn't find too interesting, and things didn't really click in like the theory aspect of law school. But I was really good. Like I foreclosure defense was a volume practice, and I learned civil procedure backwards and forwards, and I learned everything about being a good real estate attorney, like from practice, that I never learned in law school, and I absolutely loved it. And like to this day, even though I'm like, well, we'll get there, I'm a general practice transactional attorney, real estate is still a huge chunk of what I do because I've been doing it ever since I graduated from law school in 2014. And I once had a judge ask me, as I transitioned out of foreclosure defense, I once had a judge ask me, he's like, you used to do foreclosure defense. What's the defense? They didn't pay their mortgage, right? The defense is civil procedure, the rules of civil procedure. We did not let the banks foreclose on people without following the rules of civil procedure to a T. And so I had to learn the rules, and that made me a really good lawyer for other litigation matters outside of just foreclosure defense work. But one of the aspects of resolving a foreclosure defense case is a short sale. And so I got to learn real estate closings through a really difficult version of it, which is the short sale, where you have extra parties involved and you have extra contracts that are a part of that. And so so that was sort of where I first dipped my toe into the water of real estate closings too.
So interesting, because I think most people get into this industry, and that's something that when you see or hear about it, any of what you just said, really, a foreclosure processing, a short sale, any sort of bank-owned property, your like spidey senses and fear go up because the complicated nature of that process is obvious the second you look at it. The number of parties involved, the fact that you have a bank with an outstanding lien you have to take care of, like you've got somebody, like you said, whose life is probably getting torn apart in the process of being removed. So it's nasty. And so to start your career there, I mean, talk about a crash course, I guess, for better or for worse. You really got to look at the inner workings of the toughest type of real estate transaction.
Yeah, and when you're a real estate lawyer doing like residential closings, sometimes like if it's going to be your first closing eventually, right? Like a pilot is going to eventually fly the plane for the first time, but you don't want to tell everyone on the plane, hey, this is my first time I'm flying the plane on my own, right? Like you got a co-pilot there, and like I was not a solo at first. I'm a solo now. I went solo in March of 2022, but like I was working for a lawyer who like taught me things, but like still like eventually like I'm on my own for the first time at a real estate closing, right? But because I'd done the foreclosure defense practice, I had analyzed so many mortgages and so many notes that it was not the first time I'm seeing these documents and have to explain them to a client, right? So like having that practice before going right to the transactional stuff, because my next firm, I did a lot more just regular real estate transactions. I was still doing foreclosure defense work, but that was a smaller part of that firm's practice, and the real estate closings was a huge part of that practice. And so I did a lot of, I really like cut my teeth, I guess is what they say. I don't know when that phrase is from, but that just popped into my head. I really cut my teeth, on real estate transactions at my second law firm that I worked at. And I just sort of hit the ground running, and I was able to because of that past experience, even though at first glance you're like, what's the relationship between real estate closing and a foreclosure? Well, when you see everything that goes wrong, it's really easy to explain to your client, what they're signing, what it means, and what happens when it goes bad. Because I've been in a lot of closings now as a seller too, representing the sellers. And like you hear like what the buyer attorneys are explaining to their clients. Most of them don't talk about what happens when what hits the fan because they don't know. They never dealt with it. I did. I started my law practice with that.
Oh, and Derek, I know you're familiar with that too, because part of the mortgage process, as much as it is to make buyers comfortable with, hey, look, this is what you can spend. And there's also a very strict conversation, which is if you don't meet your expectations, here's what the bank does, And I think a lot of people sort of glaze over that portion.
Well, certainly. And I will tell you, I haven't heard short sale in quite some time. So just my blood pressure started to rise thinking about doing those because like Matt, as you could talk to too, on our end, handling the short sales could be a 3-month process. It could be a 6-month process. I've seen them go over and above a year too. And just like you had mentioned, Matthew, there's just a lot more parties in those transactions as well too. But I'm sure we could talk all day about uncomfortable closings and stuff and conversations that we need to have at that too, right?
Yeah, no kidding. So I'm curious. So now I love when I was reading. So obviously you made your transition. You're now out on your own. You've got your own independent firm. I love when I was reading sort of your mission statement, if you will, and the idea of providing affordable legal care to people who need it. And I'm curious, the functioning of your business. Who are your clients? What types of cases are you handling most? What need are you meeting with your business, in your opinion?
Yeah. So the sort of the moniker that I've given myself is the subscription attorney. It's like, what does that mean, right? Well, instead, like the way that most people get legal services now is it's like, oh, I have a legal problem, I think, so I better hire a lawyer. And like, how do I know who to hire? Well, like lawyers can't do direct marketing, like direct solicitation. They do like billboards or they do advertisements. And so like, it's like, I know I need to hire a lawyer because I saw a billboard that says, do you have mesothelioma? Hire me. It's like, so the lawyer...
Or I think every state has somebody with a hammer standing on a billboard.
I was going to say the hammer in Indiana. You see that for about 3 states if you're heading that way.
Yeah, so what that is lawyers doing issue spotting for the public, because one of the things you learn in law school is how to issue spot and like figure out what is a legal problem. And while I have always challenged the status quo, I think it's in my DNA, and I'm like, well, why do we have to wait until there are legal problems? That's like, I'm a plumber, but I don't fix leaky pipes. I only come and fix like burst pipes or like when there's a really big issue, because then I get to charge a premium. Well, that's most of the legal profession, right? And like even real estate lawyers are just kind of sitting back and they're like, well, we know like they're going to have to hire a lawyer when it's a real estate closing. So we're waiting for that problem to present itself to the client before marketing to them, before solving their problem, which is I want to buy a home or I want to sell a home. So, and they need the lawyer when the lawyer, gets involved. So what I do is I'm like prophylactic legal services, right? It's like I help you avoid legal problems. And accessibility is a really important part of that for me, because most lawyers can't afford their own legal services. And sort of the only reason why, at least in Illinois, like clients are willing to shell out a few $100 to, or, a couple thousand, depending on the nature of the transaction, is because it's a massive, massive purchase. And, they're using someone like Derek and they're getting a loan, right? So like that, so they can afford it, right? Because it's just part of that transaction. So at $20 a month, that's accessible for a huge part of the community that wasn't able to afford legal services before. It's still too much for some people, but it's affordable for a lot of other people. And I charge a couple $100 less than the going market rate for my flat fee for a real estate transaction, because I'm not just someone's real estate attorney, right? I want to create, like a software company, like a SaaS company, I want to create lifetime value to and from a client. So I want them to stay subscribed with me for life. And I want to be able to be there for them for whatever sort of legal situation might come up. And they could call me or message me in my client portal, and I can answer their legal questions before they become a burst legal pipe, right? And so I've actually found... I originally had like a price points where I thought it would be really attractive to tenants, but actually landlords are hiring me as like a not full-on property manager, but at least to manage the disputes with their tenant on their behalf, because they get emotional about stuff. But they could sign up even at my entry-level negotiation package, which is the $20 a month entry-level fee and my $200 a month negotiation package. But I package those together sometimes, my entry-level negotiation package. I will handle disputes with their tenants for them so that they don't end up in court. So as much as I have 8-something years of litigation experience, but I use that to help clients avoid court and avoid litigation.
Right.
And then they're only paying me $220 a month to do that. Like if they need me to draft stuff for them or draft an addendum to the lease or a settlement agreement, it's $50 a page, right? So like, but all my pricing is transparent and on my website. So I want clients to stay subscribed to me. So I'll give you a real life example. I had a client come to me because they were getting married and they needed a prenuptial agreement. And in Illinois, we call them premarital agreements. Mm-hmm. So they signed up with me at $20 a month. They got my flat fee premarital agreement, and then their soon-to-be spouse, their fiance, got their own attorney, because each side needs an attorney to make it a more valid and binding premarital agreement in Illinois. But I was the first one. I was the first attorney that this family hired to do that. So I had a relationship there, and they were subscribed to $20 a month. Well, hey, guess what? Every premarital agreement that's worth the page and words that it's written on, it has something in there that says like, I need to update my estate plan in so many days to reflect these changes, right? Because just a premarital agreement isn't sufficient to do some of the things. Your estate plan needs to do that too. So what do I offer? Well, I offer estate plans too as part of to subscribers. And so I was able to do the estate planning and make sure that I got that taken care of for them. And then then they were planning on selling the home that one of them had purchased. The other one was renting somewhere else, but then had moved in with them. But they wanted to have a family and they wanted to get a bigger house. So then they needed to sell that home that they lived in. So represented them on the sale of that home and on the purchase of their next home, right? And so then I'm representing them on 2 real estate transactions. Then you need to update the estate plan after that, right? Because now you have different, you have more assets, right? And you have to account for like what you want to do there, right? Eventually they're going to have kids and they're going to need me to come in and update their estate planning again, right? And then whatever other issues come up in their life, like, and even at one point they even unsubscribed. I make it really easy to unsubscribe and resubscribe, because at that point they're like, what other legal services could we possibly need? So they unsubscribe, but but you could always sign back into your account on my client portal, and you're presented with another sign up again at $20 a month. That's where you were last. So sign back in, because they had another issue come up, and it was like within a week. Like they unsubscribed, and like a week later they resubscribed because something happened at work and they needed me to review like some document from something at work, right? And then later on send a demand letter. So like that doesn't happen with every one of my clients, right? But when the subscription model works well, that's what it looks like. And so some people just stay subscribed because they like being able to talk to an attorney and like whenever something comes up, or like make sure something's not a problem. But real estate has really become really only one aspect of what I do. I still make a decent chunk of like my annual revenue like through the real estate practice, especially on the sell side, because I'm a title agent. But that's sort of what the idea looks like, and I could become trusted counsel to this family, right? And so in whatever thing that they're going to be engaged in, and they're paying me. I'm not marketing to them to sign up with me for a one-off transaction. They're paying me to use me.
Right, and that's the difference, right? I mean, you hear the term like ambulance chaser, and this is the flip of that, right? You're not waiting for the accident to show up and offer the services. You're getting in front, establishing the relationship, so that when they need insert service here, you are the person that they call and you have an answer for that. It's pretty cool. And I can see where for your business, it gives you a lot of different tools to deploy as a business owner and operator. But then as somebody who's using it as a consumer, it makes it easy for me. If I don't have to seek, well, nobody knows how to seek legal guidance at all, but put that aside. And then I have to do it now. At least I have an easy option to access you for information's guidance, helps, review. It's pretty accessible. Now, when this model launched, was the idea based on that? Was the idea, I want to be able to service as many clients in as many ways as I can?
That was definitely part of it. A lot of it was built on constraints of my last job. So like at my last firm, I was actually doing foreclosure defense work, primarily litigation, billable hour work. And I always had this growing book of transactional business, mostly real estate, residential real estate transactions. So I've done and I still do some commercial transactions. I just helped a client with a commercial lease a couple weeks ago. So like I do that side of it too, but like it was really like good, like word of mouth. I wasn't marketing, but I always did a good job with the real estate transactions, and I got to know some agents and past clients, would tell their friends. And so like I had like the small but growing book of transactional business. And so I did have this one business client who's still a client today. And I was sort of building this transactional practice around this client. And I was like, well, this doesn't make any sense to be charging him, and I was giving him what I thought was a good deal, which was $250 an hour, which is about the lowest any billable hour lawyer charges. Like our firm charged much more than that for other people, but he's somebody I knew for a long time. So I gave him the lowest rate that I could. I was like, this doesn't make any sense because like he's not calling me when like there's an issue, right? Because the clock starts ticking, at that point. And he's a friend. So like, how do you like separate that, business relationship from the friend relationship when you're billing by the hour? It's really hard to do. And my firm was really supportive of me. I came up with the idea for the subscription model, like really as far back as like 2017. But it wasn't until the pandemic where the firm was like, oh yeah, like a lot of our billable hour time that used to be in court is gone. So what was the subscription model thing that you were talking about? So like they were really supportive about it, but they still wanted me to like bill as many hours as possible. So it was really hard to build a practice within a practice. But some of the constraints around why I like, so for my $20 a month subscription, it's only for like the last 2 hours of the day, of my work day, that those subscribers get access to me. If you want access to my entire calendar of availability, you need to start at the premier level or up, which is $100 a month and up. So like that constraint, which has actually worked really well, and also explains the difference in value, just one aspect, because there's other reasons too, but like that's one reason why you only get, it's $20 a month. It's because you only get access to 2 hours a day to like actually get 15-minute increment, like scheduled Zooms or calls with me, right?
Right.
So like that constraint was there because of I was working in another practice at the time, but it's actually served me really well for the almost year that I've been doing this. But the $20 a month, it was originally lower too. But I sort of had to increase it because I was also looking at like I looked at other markets. What are people paying for Netflix, for Amazon Prime, and for other things too? And like, because it's if you charge too little, then they're not going to use your services. But like every month, if you get that charge for $20, you're like, oh yeah, like I should call my lawyer. Like that's $20. Like, like I have to contact my attorney. Well, I try to do things like I try to automate, communications so that people are encouraged to use my services above and beyond. I can't make money on just $20 a month with clients. I'm hoping that they hire me for other things too, right? And they do. But I still think it's super important to be accessible and help avoid other problems. Because if you do a good job and help people avoid problems, then they're going to keep coming back to you too. And so it's just about, good service too. You could have an excellent model, but if you don't provide good service, it really doesn't matter.
Yeah. I was going to touch on the fact that for like the price of a Netflix subscription, you'd be able to chat with an attorney whenever you want, right? That being said, you mentioned people like landlords using this, maybe some younger couples when they're buying and marrying. Who would be the prominent customer? Who's using this service most often? Who are you servicing?
Well, I will tell you that the clients who use me most often are like my small business clients who are like, they're operating a business and they used to handle, they're the founder, CEO, they wear a lot of hats in their business. And now for an affordable monthly amount, they're able to outsource their legal problems, right? And their legal issues. So they're using me the most, but they're also paying me more, but they're paying me a lot less than they would be paying a billable hour attorney.
That's the thing. It's more within the scale of services you offer, but it's low on the grand scheme of hiring an attorney on retainer, for example,
Right. So like if the business hits a certain level, like I got to imagine Guaranteed Rate has a lot of in-house counsel. I'm sure they do. Right.
I assure you they have plenty of them. Plenty of them. A lot of them on retainer too. I'm sure there's a whole floor of them would be my guess, right?
Yeah, inside and outside counsel, right? They have inside counsel and they have outside counsel.
Yeah.
So I'm like fractionalized in-house counsel, right? I am outside counsel, but just like you pay an in-house attorney biweekly salary or a monthly salary, right? I am a small fraction of that, less any benefits that you'd have to pay to an actual in-house attorney and taxes and other obligations that you'd have to pay to an actual employee, and the potential liabilities associated with that. So it's like paying like a fractional employee or a fractional in-house attorney. I'm that for small businesses where it would never make sense for them to hire a full-time in-house attorney. And I'm like that for freelancers and solopreneurs. And I really do love that type of, like, I love representing all clients, and I certainly make more money from the small business clients. So like, send more of those my way. But like, I do identify with the solopreneur, the freelancer, the gig worker, because that's kind of me. I'm a solopreneur, right?
Yeah.
And I'm off.
We all are. Everybody on this call, you know? Yeah.
Right. Hustle. You got to hustle. So like,
Yeah.
I love that. And I have these weekly, I lucked into managing a freelancer group on the Meetup app, meetups.com/scaling freelance. And every single week, actually later today at noon, we do talks about like different things that could help freelancers. And we try to keep it broad because like we have artists on there. We have real estate agents. We have like, you know, we have all people of all sorts, 3D motion designers, you know. So like we have all types of freelancers on there. So we try to keep it broad. Today's is about websites and making your own website and stuff. So, and I try to sneak in some legal stuff like terms and conditions and privacy policy because, you know, it'd be great to convert some of them to paying clients. And it would be great for other people in the freelancing group. It's like 400 something people to hire each other, like for like help with other client projects, right? So like the goal is benefit everyone. But I really like that group. And you know, they can't afford a billable hour for sure. But if they have sufficient like clients signed up and sufficient income, $300 a month to help them with 3 projects or 3 contracts a month is life-changing for them. And it lets them focus more on money-making activities for $300 a month, right? So like that, like I see a lot more potential there than anywhere else. And then like just the everyday people, like I love representing and like being there and being trusted counsel for everyday people. And it's protected by attorney-client privilege. You know, people have ideas these days. People have ideas and they're like, I want to start my own business. And like now they could talk with an attorney, with me, protected by attorney-client privilege about their interesting business idea. And while I don't register trademarks and I don't register copyrights, I refer that out right now, though I have so many requests for like the registering copyrights thing. I got to like figure that out. And I've been working on that. I advise around it though, because I'm familiar with IP laws. I understand what's protectable, what's not. And I could help with trademark searches and I could help with that type of thing to like see if like their brand idea is viable for like what they want to call the thing, right? So like I help people with that too, and it's all protected by attorney-client privilege. And right now, you know, you could kind of maybe have people sign NDAs, you know, to like bounce ideas off of people, and I do help with NDAs too. But you know, like it's I have a lot of fun doing that too. So I know like lawyers need you need to like whatever your business model is, you really should niche down. But my niche right now is my business model. It's the subscription model. It's very rare. There are maybe 24 attorneys in the whole United States who are using this model, and none of them using it like me. So you know, I don't want to pick yet. And so on my website, I have the 3 buckets: individuals, freelancers, businesses. And so for now, at least, I'm representing all of those sorts.
That's great. Yeah, I think we talk about this all the time, and particularly Derek and I, when we're talking about this show or how we market things, you know, how we want to niche down. And I think there is something to be said for figuring out that your niche is the actual deliverable, right? Your model is what's interesting about your business. So whether you deliver a lot of services within that or not, you know, time will tell with your client base. But I do think that it's a very approachable business model, which is not normally something I would say when we have an attorney on this show. So that's a pretty cool thing on its own. Now, separate of what you're doing in your professional world, you live in Deerfield, correct?
That's right.
Now, and you bought a home in Deerfield?
Yeah, in the crazy market that was the summer of 2021.
Did you? Now, I guess I have 2 questions. Number 1, I want to hear the story about buying the home. But 2, did you represent yourself through your own transaction? I assume you did.
I mean, it's complicated, right? Because like I was very involved, but another attorney at the firm that I was still with my last firm at the time, and another attorney like, you know, did it. But I was not the only real estate attorney at the firm, even though most of what we did was insurance defense work. There were some other attorneys with real estate transactional experience, and we had a relationship with like a title company, which I still have a relationship with today in my solo practice.
Good. Yeah.
But so yes, I was very involved, but I was not like the attorney on the deal. You know,
yeah.
But I was, you know, I was making sure like you know, everything, you know, was exactly the way that I would want to do it. And you know, having represented, you know, at the time I'd probably represented like over 50, you know, clients on real estate transactions. And I never purchased a home myself, you know, so like it definitely changes things. Like, and I've worked with agents who are like, you know, never purchased homes themselves. Right. But, and I will say though that like it's refreshing to like have that perspective, but then it made me feel better about the job that I was doing before, because it was really like nothing was different. If anything, like I learned some things that you absolutely should not do if you want to get a home in a difficult market, which is like send a punch list along with your offer, right? Of like, here's all the things that need to be accomplished first. It's like there is value to getting under contract first and trying to handle that in attorney review, right? Like there is a reason why, like, because then
we talk about it all the time, or I talk about it all the time with clients about building good faith, right? And like the value or importance of building good faith when you're negotiating, because you can't just be like, I want this and I want this and I want you to do it. And it's just like, we all have to get along here. It's not a fight.
I've actually had 2 contracts come together this year because the previous buyer got way too like nitpicky over inspection. So they cut bait and were like, yeah, we're just going to go with the next offer. I mean, that's happened already this year.
Yeah. And it, like at the end of the day too, it's up to the client, right? It's like if that's what the client wants to do, that's what you do.
That's what you do, right? Yeah.
They have to learn, and they have to learn from experience sometimes, and that's okay. So like that was something that I learned, because like I come in and I'm like, let's take care of this in the front end. But like part of me still does believe that like if you can't agree to it before the contract is signed, you're not going to agree to it in return.
There's a little bit of like, don't pull the wool over my eyes, right? Just tell me what you're going to ask for. If you already know you're going to ask for it,
Right. And like for this specific example, like they had like covered up the foundation in the basement in this home. But
yeah, see, that's
beautiful. So we're like let's mention something like that before we with our offer,
right.
see what they say. And so anyway, but so it really depends. But like that experience, which I never had before, because most of my clients, this is the first like transaction they're ever doing that requires them hire an attorney for anything.
Yeah.
So they don't know to ask for things pre-contract. And I get a lot of my clients after they've already made their offer. And what's nice about being a $20 a month subscription attorney is I now have clients come to me before they make their offer. And I can help that form contract, that form real estate contract be a little bit better going into the process and handling things like prorations. Because sometimes you get it and it's like to be determined. Let the lawyers negotiate the prorations. Well, I'll tell you what, when I get a buyer, I could put in like, 115% prorations and they, nobody says anything about it. Like that's a really good result, for tax prorations for my client, because they came to me first, and the agents aren't always thinking about that kind of thing. But I spend some of my time negotiating what are the prorations going to be, at closing during the attorney review. It's like, well, look, if I could say, well, look, your client agreed to this in the offer, so we're not negotiating that.
Right. Well, it's you said it earlier, knowing the rules, knowing the contract, knowing the process, that's a lot of what real estate is, whether you're doing it in a foreclosure, whether you're doing a normal transaction, right? It's not, I say this all the time, it's not rocket science, but it is a repeated process that if you do it right, you can do it in a way that protects you. You can do it in a way that doesn't leave you exposed for future risk as best you can, barring some disaster or something unwilling that happens. But you have to know what you're doing. And I do think that the value we have being in Illinois is we get somebody like you. You can have an attorney on the transaction. People at first are like, I don't want to pay for an attorney. I'm like, why? I don't want to be your legal representation. In other states, that's what it is. The real estate attorney or the real estate agent does everything the attorney does here. I'm like, I didn't go to school for this. My license is the actual transaction of real estate, but it has nothing to do with the law and functioning of, title and everything else. So
And the way that I explain it is it's like insurance. It's not insurance, but it's like insurance. Is it worth, for me, is it worth $450? Divide that by 30 years.
Right.
Worth it? Is it worth it to hire a lawyer? Probably.
Well, and how often things come up where my clients have closed and then a year in, something pops up, they get something in the mail they don't recognize, and who is it that they call? The real estate attorney. They're like, look, I don't know what this is, and you were the person that represented me. What is this, right? And even just to have that, and for you, is to have that on retainer so that if it's something important or if it's a problem, you can actually go deal with it. That's super valuable because, normally they call the real estate attorney who goes, oh, you should deal with that. Call this person. I refer you to this attorney who deals with that. I only do real estate. But for you, you have this portfolio of offerings. So if they stay in touch, doesn't matter what comes in the mail or what they're surprised with.
Well, that's just the part that could be irritating sometimes when people use an attorney who's an attorney, not necessarily a real estate attorney, right? Because not most attorneys are like Mathew over there. We're like, the Swiss Army attorney of attorneying, right? Where they could do it all, right? Where some of them are just, hey, we're sticking to real estate, we're sticking to probate, whatever it may be. And you could get yourself in a lot of issues with that too.
I was worried you're going to say real estate attorney is like something you like to do on the side, because we get a lot of attorneys and transactions. I'm like, you went to law school for what? Not this.
Probate. You probate usually. Yeah.
Yeah. Nothing in court. I avoid court now. I use my past court experience to help me with my transactions, but
That's great.
no, like and it's hard, right? Because like I am a general practice transactional attorney, technically, right? Like,
Yeah.
But I am also a business attorney, and I'm a real estate attorney, and I'm those things too. And I do a lot of my work in those areas.
Well, and you get to practice it. I think that where we run into issues truly is we see attorneys that do something their whole life, and then they're asked to do something they never do. And when they come in, they're in blind and they're trying to navigate an Illinois real estate transaction. It's difficult on its own. But, I think what you value is that you bring skills to the table where you learned in a difficult market how to transact in the real estate world first, and now you can pass that along while also servicing these clients and their other needs. So it's pretty cool.
Right. And to transition back to, I think what you were getting to earlier is think about like being like on the other side of it, where I was the one transacting, like purchasing the home. Like you also get into that emotional state, right? And
You do.
so like we were under contract at a home in Highland Park before Deerfield, and a better offer came around, and like the contract explicitly says you cannot cancel this contract for a higher purchase price, right?
Isn't it amazing what people can do? Yeah.
Yeah, so they came up with like a BS reason. We hadn't even we had just entered attorney review. We sent the letter, and they waited until like 4 days to like send a letter that just said we're canceling the contract pursuant to attorney review. And we were like, what's happened here? So you definitely don't want to do that when your buyer is an attorney, because we were, we almost like filed like malpractice claims with.
I would think, yeah, you probably had a legitimate case too.
Yeah, with the broker, the listing broker and stuff, and because they engaged in essentially what's tortious interference of contract, right? Because they continue to go out to find higher prices, and then their client canceled the contract, so like they're liable, like not just the seller.
Right. What they can do is accept the backup offer and let it sit there. But what they can't do is walk away from your offer for that offer because it's better. Because like you said, they're contractually obligated to perform, and their performance is delivery of the home. So it's like, where did we lose the process here? So that's super. I hate when I hear stuff like that, because it is a reflection of all the professionals involved, the attorney, the real estate agent, and obviously the sellers. But it sounds like at least, better things happen. You found a different home and everything.
And so hard of a market as it was, we did find another home in Deerfield.
Yeah.
We really liked that. Was literally the same exact price, right? Like not as an up-to-date home, but like in terms of like size of property, we went from like having a backyard that was like the size of a garage to having a backyard that was like a half acre, and it was like the same price. And it just, sure, it's not like lakeshore property. It wasn't like on the lake anyway in Highland Park, but it was like, like it's not like the North Shore anymore because we're a town over.
Right.
But so that's kind of why we could get even more property for the same price, but the home was also not as up to date as the other home. So that was another reason why it was the same price. I'm the kind of person that gets super involved in communities. Like I'm super involved in the American Bar Association, which is the trade association, the largest trade association in the U.S. for attorneys. Like I've held leadership roles ever since law school. I got involved on my community theater board because I am an acting, dancing, and singing lawyer, and so like I'm into that stuff. And so I'm on. I host their podcast, I host and produce the Deerfield Family Theater podcast. It's called the DFT Podcast. Check it out. And,
Very cool.
And so like I get super involved. I'm on the Park Foundation board, which is a nonprofit where we raise money for scholarships for families who can't afford like park district things in the community. And so like I always get involved. And I was supposed to be in the Deerfield parade when that terrible tragedy happened in Highland Park, where we were maybe going to live. So like I'm thinking like in hindsight, it's a really good thing that seller canceled the contract, breached the contract, where I could have collected, where we could have sued for a specific performance, even though we didn't, because otherwise I would have gotten involved in Highland Park, and I would have been on their boards, and I would have been in that parade. And, think about like, our family would have been at risk in that situation. So sometimes, sellers buyers, I should say, get really upset when they like don't get a bid on a home, or like something happens in attorney review and they lose the home. But you never know, how you will benefit in the future from that. It wasn't meant to be. that you owning that home wasn't meant to be, and keep searching for the next home because it's going to hopefully be better for you, like it was for us.
That's such an amazing story because you're absolutely right. I mean, it seems more than likely that you would have been there to see everything that happened, which would have been terrible. And we see buyers lose all the time. And there's two things that happen when people lose an offer. Number one, they either shut down, right, and the search stops entirely, or they move on. They still need to find a home. They're motivated. They lost. They find something else. And I think you're a perfect example of why there's a lot of momentum when you're in the search to keep going. And when you do find the right home, it often works out a lot better than the home that you lost out on anyway, right? Like you said, you get more land, you get a slightly different opportunity. So it's just, you don't know what's out there, and the real estate market is always shifting. So if you lose an opportunity, there's always something around the corner. You just have to keep looking. So I'm really happy to hear for you, for your family's sake, that you found an opportunity that keeps you safe and that you're settled now, that you're comfortable. That's awesome.
And the North Shore is very safe. That was
yes, it is. Yeah.
That happened, and I'm so glad, at least at the time of recording, our state has officially banned it. Whether banned assault rifles, whether or not that stops things coming over from other states, and whatever it is. Like I grew up loving going to shooting ranges too, and so like I loved going shooting and stuff, and I still do like to go to shoot clay pigeons. But like especially that experience taught me that we don't need certain things in our communities.
Yeah, there's too much of some things, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, and I guess where we want to end every show, really, and you mentioned community, is with an opportunity for you to speak to the community, whoever's listening to this. So is there anything that you feel we didn't talk about today you'd like to leave everybody with? Is there anything that maybe you're seeking in your business right now, whether you're hiring or if you're just looking for new clients? Is there anybody you're trying to connect with? Whatever it is, we'd love to connect to Mathew as best we can.
Yeah. So, like the question that I like to ask people is, do you know anyone who wants to avoid business, personal problems? I'm the subscription attorney. Like I help people avoid big, expensive legal problems. And maybe you don't know what a legal problem is. Well, that's why my subscription started at $20 a month, right? Because you could call me for a very low rate and figure out, is this a legal problem? I want my clients to get back to either what's making them money or what's making them happy. So, that's the type of attorney that I am. And I do it for a predictable and transparent price. All my pricing is on my website, subscriptionattorney.com. If you're listening to this and you are an attorney, I do have a podcast for attorneys and technologists building for the legal space, and that is Law Subscribed, and it's lawsubscribed.com for that, to learn more about that podcast. But my engagement agreement is on my website. My prices are on my website. I'm not hiding anything. Everything is there. And so whether you're a lawyer, an agent, a potential buyer or seller, I mean, that's the best place to find out more. I'm most active on LinkedIn, so if you search the Subscription Attorney or Mathew Kerbis, go ahead and connect with me on there. My DMs are open.
Excellent. We love that. We will make sure that we link the podcast, your LinkedIn, how everyone can access your website. We'll put all that in the show notes so it's easy for everybody to find. And we love whenever anybody comes on and says, hey, DM me, I'm happy to respond, because our guests will, I'm sure. So thank you again, Mathew. This has been an incredible time talking with you. I'm sure we'll reconnect in the future. And hey, maybe Derek and I will give you a call, because who doesn't need legal services? So
appreciate it, Mathew.
Thanks for having me.